Hello there, teachers, and welcome to Learning is Not Quiet presents Metaphors and Similes. Today, I'm going to share with you how I teach about figurative language, especially using my products found on Teachers Pay Teachers. I am going to talk about how I differentiate and extend this product to meet the needs of all of my students. I am also going to talk about some of the strengths of this product, as well as some pitfalls you might want to avoid. If you're watching this video, you might be just watching it for ideas, or you could be interested or have already purchased this entire Metaphors and Similes product, this figurative or literal metaphor war, and we're working on a distance learning version of this as well. So with that, let's get started. Brief housekeeping note, all of the products that you see here, there are links in the description if you want to go find them. Also, please note that this Metaphor War, a figurative language game, is included in this Metaphors and Similes product. Okay, so when you open up this Metaphor War, a figurative language game, you are going to see a bunch of pink cards that look like this. So step one is to laminate and cut out all of these pink cards. Mine are still at school, so I'm sorry I don't have the laminated version to show you, but you get the idea. I highly recommend going to a high school or middle school and get these cut out by someone who needs service hours. It's totally win-win, and it saves you a ton of work. This game was called Spit when I was a child in Michigan. It is called different things all over, but it's kind of a variation on that. So you're going to take your whole deck of cards. I only cut out one column. And you want to divide them into two piles, two equal piles. So like this. So one pile here, one pile here. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take the two top cards and you're going to flip them over. So in this case, the first one says, I am hungry. And the second one says, she was as quiet as the grave. So what I'm looking for is matches. When they're both figurative, when they're both metaphors, when they're both literal, or when they're both similes. So this one says she was as quiet as the grave. That's a simile. I am so hungry. That's literal. So I can't pick these. Now, so with my partner, this is usually a 2 to 4 person game. We would pass this and we would put them in the discard pile. Let's do the next one. So the next one I flip over, it says, she was so proud of herself. She'd done it. She'd graduated. This one says, do you know how to get the campfire started? So these are both literal language. So what I would do with the other players of this game is we're going to try to slap it first, and whoever gets their hand first on the two middle cards gets to keep both of the cards as a positive point. You can also play this as war, where you divide it into two decks of cards, and students flip them over, and the person who has a metaphor gets wins, and it's basically like the higher card, just like you would have regular war. So that's kind of how this one goes. As a differentiation, especially if you have students with disabilities and you want to create a file folder game using this, you can cut these out. You can take a file folder, put metaphor, simile, and literal language, and have students literally sort them into categories and check. So those are different ways to use that. This game is really good as a literacy center. It's not that loud, other than sometimes you have to really monitor the slapping, especially with 5th grade boys. I find that the slapping becomes kind of intense. We want to make sure that we're just lightly tapping, not intending to kill anybody. This is also a great I'm finished activity. Put it in a baggie, put it at the back of the classroom, and when students finish their work early, they can go grab it and practice with a friend. This is really great during standardized testing time when you want to keep the classroom learning going, but you don't really want to do worksheets or anything too mentally taxing. So those are all great ways to use this game. Now I'm going to get into the notebook. So my notebooks are on reading strategies and grammar are a 5-day system. The first day is really easy. A lot of times teachers open this and they're like, this isn't what I was expecting. And then it gets harder and harder as you move throughout the week. Day 2 is we teach something explicitly and we have students try to think about applying it. Days 3 and 4 is when we bump up the rigor and we get students to really start applying and thinking about it and attaching it to text, thinking about it more deeply, extending beyond the basic direct teaching. And on day 5 is a Broadway musical Mania that I usually use as an assessment. So that's kind of how this 5-day system works. The first day for this one is Who are you? So it asks a series of questions, and you have to compare yourself and answer each of the questions below. So some of the questions are like, which animal are you most like and why? What fruit are you most like and why? And sometimes the kids think this is really silly, but it gets to think about comparisons. And one of the things I emphasize a lot when teaching metaphors and similes and figurative language is that not all figurative language is created equally. So if I say I'm like a horse because I have brown hair, that's not a really good metaphor. It's not a very good simile because that's not really saying a whole lot about me. If I say I'm like a frog because I'm so energetic and I'm jumping all over the place from idea to idea to idea, that's more accurate, right? So this kind of starts us getting thinking about that. And just by having students compare themselves to these objects, to these categories, it really gets them thinking about figurative language. And it kind of is, again, adding to that metaphor, simile, figurative language drawer of like all these different experiences, all these different ideas, all of these different activities that help really build on that concept. After this, you'll notice there is a coloring page. I used to have my students actually color and turn these in. I have learned since that, coloring is not an effective learning strategy for every student. So I really have now these coloring pages either at the back of my classroom or I pass them out at the beginning of the week, and they are meant to be extra credit. So things that students can practice, get that coloring, get that art in. And for me, I find coloring to be a very effective strategy. Once I see something in color, once I've really focused on it, I can remember it really well. And I find other students are kind of like that too. And so that's what the coloring page is designed for. You can do that on day one. You can save it, send it home, do it as extra credit. Use these as you see best. Okay, so now we're on day 2 where we're doing more direct teaching. For this one, we're sorting words and sentences into metaphors and similes and I believe literal language. So again, it's another version of this card game, but now in an interactive notebook. Again, this can be turned in for students with disabilities into a file folder game where you have them sort them into the correct categories. Really emphasize, in case it's been a long time since you were in elementary school, metaphors are a direct comparison. So I am a mountain of strength. Similes use words like and as. So I am as fast as a fox is the traditional answer. And literal means it could literally happen that way. And a way I extend this is I talk to students about all the times that people use the word literal incorrectly, even myself often. And what that means. So if someone says, I literally ate a cow today, they did not literally eat a cow. That would mean they physically went outside and ate a cow. I have students imagine what that sentence looks like in their head, and that's when I bring in that visualization piece. So if it says, I am a mountain, I want you to think of that person as a mountain. If it doesn't make sense, if it's not something that would be in a fantasy book, then it is. If it's something that would be in a fantasy book, not in real life, then it's a figurative language. Okay, so now we're moving on to days 3 and 4 where we're practicing this, we're doing more activities, and we're applying it to actual texts. So for this mystery box, now we're writing, right? We're taking a look at the objects and use figurative language to describe each. Use good word choice. I do not tell you what to put in these boxes. I often use shoe boxes. If I don't have boxes, I actually just use paper bags. And I have students, I put a timer on the board, usually about 5-10 minutes, no more than that because you don't want that much silent, unstructured time. You'll notice how here it says box 1, box 2, box 3. I'll literally write on the outside of the bag or the box, the number, and students don't have to do them in order. They travel around, they look in the bags or boxes, they write a simile or metaphor, they use that figurative language, and they move on to the next one. When they're done, they sit down and they can move on to the other activities, which I'm going to show in a second, the color by code. So I have actually improved on this color by code. I've redone it so that the words are not so off center. So it's a lot better. And that kind of explains some of the comments I got on this product early on. Thank you so much to teachers who helped me understand. I don't know why those words get all off center. But what we do here is for similes, we color them yellow. For metaphors, we color them pink. And for literal language, we color it blue. Again, this is really just getting us familiar with that vocabulary, simile, metaphor, and literal. And it's helping us get more things in that drawer, more examples, more experiences with that. And it adds in that coloring piece, which students really love and is a great way to give them more visual, for our more visual learners. So that's really day 3. Day 4, literal, metaphor, or simile. Again, we're sorting, but this time we're shifting to that standardized testing language where students are identifying literal, metaphor, or simile. This is also day 4. We're doing the figurative language read it. Read the story below, highlight all of the sentences that are figurative language and not literal. So now we're taking it into a text and we're applying it. Again, a way to extend on this text is to ask other questions about this story that we see here. Okay, so that's kind of days 1 through 4. You can also take this one and this one as a grade. For most of these, I take these as completion or participation. The one that I really take for a grade is the Broadway musical Mania, and I really believe in Broadway musical Mania. I created it by looking. My background is in linguistics, and I took a whole bunch of release tests from Virginia and all across the United States, and I really looked at those sentence stems and tried to take those as sentence stems and apply them to Broadway musicals. What's really powerful about it is it exposes students who might have no experience with this kind of more classical music. It really incorporates the arts into your language arts lesson plan. It also is a little bit easier for students to dive into a really difficult text because they're listening to it in the background, but we're challenging them and pushing that rigor by having them read it independently first. So that's kind of why I do the Broadway musical Mania. There are some students who love it, and like as soon as I turn on the Broadway musical Mania, they're like, yay! And some students are like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing the Broadway musicals again. All students, I would say, really benefit from it, and I've seen their reading scores go way up as a result. For a lot of students, they know how to read, they know how to comprehend and interpret. They have a really difficult time with the language of testing. So this kind of overcomes that hurdle for them. So this is what it looks like. You have these lyrics here. This is from The Greatest Showman called Rewrite the Stars. And the first time I have students look at these lyrics, they read it to themselves silently. I usually have them do this right when they come in, and they are used to this system after the first time doing it. The second time through, I usually have students take highlighters and highlight something that we're working on or highlight good word choice. For this one, I would have them highlight all of the figurative language, and that's where I really get to see how much they learn from the read. So for example, what if we rewrite the stars? This is a great example of visualizing that in our head. Do you really take a marker and go up to the night sky and write the stars where you want? No, that doesn't happen in real life. That's a fictional fantasy thing. Therefore, it is figurative language. So again, we're doing more of that sorting, more of putting things in that drawer, really gets kids used to this figurative language. So that's the second time through. After the first time they've read it, I usually start playing it in the background so that they can follow along. I do not show the video because that usually gives too much away, and I want them to read this and interpret this without the video. Especially for students who have attention disorders or ADHD, ADD, things like that, I have them take the eraser of their pencil and literally follow along word by word or with their finger. This shows me that they're really trying to engage with that text, and it's really powerful for them to be able to read this very challenging text and interpret it, and it gives them confidence as they move forward in other kinds of reading. So after they do this, another thing I have them do the third or fourth time we listen to the song, I'm usually pretty sick of the song by the end of the day, especially if we have switching classes, but it is very much worth it. I have them draw pictures of what they think is happening. Not artistic works of perfection, but a great visualization and another great way to connect the arts STEAM to our language arts block. Then I have students answer those standardized test type questions, and I take that for a grade, and it really builds on each other, especially if you use my reading strategies bundles on a regular basis. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video and for learning more about similes and metaphors. If you liked this product, be sure to check out other grammar and reading strategy bundles like this that follow that same pattern. If you really like this, it's available in a huge bundle with things that you can teach and use throughout the entire school year. It's 50% off. If you love the Broadway musical Mania, lots of people do, there is a whole Broadway musical Mania reading test prep available on my store, as well as book clubs and book club bundles, so that you can extend and use these strategies beyond this kind of worksheet drill and kill activities, hands-on kind of learning. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned a lot, and thank you so much for teaching the next generation of readers. Adios, readers and leaders. Adios.